We're back on the 1987 944 Turbo. It's been almost a month since I replaced the short block on this car, but I've got a nagging issue. Stick around while I try to figure this out. I cannot believe it has been almost a month since 944 Fest and almost a month since I replaced the short block on my 1987 944 Turbo. It has ran flawlessly. I have had 0 leaks, but I do have some nagging issues, and one of them I'm going to try to solve today. How about that for a jack job? Don't worry, might seem a little sketchy, but one, these jack braces are extremely robust. There's no way that's coming down, but better safe than sorry, so I did add a jack stand. I am underneath the driver's side of the car, and the issue that I've been having is I get a vibration or a little bit of a grinding feeling in the steering wheel, but I do not seem to feel it anywhere else within the car. Now, I used to have an issue where whenever I would make a right-hand turn, I would get a really nasty grinding noise. And the cause of that issue was from right here. This is my 3-inch downpipe from Fab Speed. And one of the things that I didn't notice when I put the motor back together was that it was actually contacting this piece of metal where the caster block bolts to. So I had been scratching my head trying to figure that out, and it has been something that's actually been going on for a couple of years, and it coincides with me putting this downpipe. It was rubbing against that metal piece, or that flange with the pinch welds. So it was actually when I took the car to get an alignment done that I asked them to see if they could figure anything out, and they came back pretty quickly and called me and said, your downpipe is actually contacting that piece of metal. So they took a grinder and ground down a little piece of that metal, which did free up some space, and they threw some paint on there to keep it from corroding. I'm thinking that my current issue, since I don't have the grinding noise anymore, let's see if I can focus on it. There is the steering shaft, and right above that steering shaft is a heat shield. So I'm noticing that there are some rubbing marks on that heat shield. Now, why it would be doing that now and not before, I don't know. But what my plan is I'm going to try to remove that heat shield and see if that fixes the problem. So basically my steps are, I'm going to remove this heat shield, and then I'm going to remove this heat shield, which is not easy to get to. It's 2 10mm bolts that hold that shield on, and they're accessed from above it. I have a stubby 10mm wrench that I should be able to get up there and get it taken off. It's going to be extremely difficult to film this, so I will try if I can, but if not, I'll do it off camera and we'll see what happens. All right, I have the heat shield out of the car. There is absolutely no way I could get a good angle with the camera while I was taking this off. I do see some rubbing. It feels very smooth, and it actually looks pretty recent, if you can tell there. So that may be the smoking gun. But the only way to find out is to get the car back down on the ground, start it up so I have power to the power steering rack, make a couple of turns, and see if I'm still feeling the vibration. Don't mind the towels. I've been laying on the ground and I don't want to get this interior filthy. All right, so I'm gonna have to do this quick. I do not want the engine to get super hot, because if I figure this out in order to put that heat shield back on, I don't want to burn the crap out of my arm, because that heat shield sits right underneath the turbo. So I am going to start up the car, try to turn the wheel, and see if there's any difference. I can already tell there is no more feel in the wheel. I think I found the smoking gun. Now I just have to figure out why it's rubbing on that heat shield. So I've drawn a couple of marks to hopefully better show where that joint is rubbing. I can't tell if that longer line has been around longer, or maybe that was rubbing previously, or how recent it is. But that smaller circle right there is definitely much more recent. So the question is, why? Why is that joint rubbing against this heat shield that has been on the car since 1987? The only thing I can think of is it does look like it's a little bit deformed and flattened out, and maybe by flattening it out, it's made this hump a little bit flatter and not allowing enough room. I'm gonna get it in the vise, try to get this bent up, and let's see what it looks like. All right, so that's a little bit better. If you can see now, that line across the top is much straighter than what it used to be. But the question is, did it make enough of a dome that it would not make contact with that part of the heat shield anymore? I think what I'd like to do is see if I can take a hammer and see if I can maybe try to hammer this out a little bit and give just a little bit more room. My concern is I don't want to get these two fixed nuts out of alignment so that the bolts won't be able to fit in, because this longer one goes through the motor mount arm as well as this one. So if these are out of alignment, then these bolts are not going to be able to get in. So I have to be a little bit careful, but I will see if I can pound this and make any additional room so that that knuckle on the half shaft won't make contact anymore. All right, after some hammering on the vise, I was able to focus on where I was seeing those two portions where that joint was rubbing. I was able to get a couple of humps right here and right here. So next step is to get this back in the car. Hopefully these nuts will still line up so it will still bolt in. Did that hammering actually work? So time to get back under the car and see if it worked. Well, that didn't work. Here we are 2 weeks later, and as you can see, I now have another heat shield here. It is in not quite as nice a condition as my original one, but so essentially, like I said in the previous clip, I was able to take a hammer and basically put a dome on the top of the heat shield to try to clear that U-joint. However, when I did that, it mangled this portion of the heat shield to the point where these bolts would not go through the motor mount arm and bolt freely into the heat shield. So a few weeks have gone by. I had to wait about a week for this to come, and then I had a week-long work trip. So take two. This, as you can see, if we can compare them, this is what it should look like, and this one, especially right through here, where this is supposed to come out this way, this is now just kind of beat up. This one's got a little rust on it. I'm gonna take something and try to clean it up a little bit, but then I'm gonna get under the car and see if this does the trick. We're back under the car, and hopefully this comes out well and it's easy to see, because it's really hard to get a good camera angle underneath here. But I've been driving the car for the past 2 weeks, not too often, mainly just on the weekends or just for short drives. But so here's the U-joint. Here's where it connects, where my finger is right here, the bolt that connects the U-joint onto the steering rack. So it is a splined connection. Let's see if I can zoom in. Here's my finger, here's the pinch bolt, and here you can see the very top. It's going to be out of focus, but that is the splined section that comes off of the steering rack. So it connects to this U-joint. This U-joint, you can see there's not a lot of room between the underside of the motor mount. So the motor mount is right there. You can see the gold. So these are genuine Porsche motor mounts. I replaced them about maybe two years ago. essentially you can see there, right there, go back and focus, that is where one bolt goes through to bolt that heat shield on, and the other one is right here. I ended up using some sandpaper to take that rust off, and that got rid of some of the zinc coating as well. So I hit it with a little rust converter, let that do its job, and then I did spray a little bit of Krylon on there. This is on the underside of it. I could really care less what it looks like. It might make it easier to see if that U-joint is still rubbing on this new heat shield. I've got the heat shield installed. It was not easy. It's tough getting your hands up there. The bolts come down from the top. What you have to do is put one hand through this area here that you're seeing, and then the other over here. If you remove the air duct that feeds the back of the alternator, you can see the back side of the steering shaft, or the U-joint. You can see the U-joint right there, as well as the heat shield. Now it's time to drop the car back down on the ground, turn the wheel a few times, and see if it's rubbing. So I'm inside the car. I am going to start it up to make it easier to turn the wheel left and right. I don't want to leave it running too long because it gets really hot underneath the car. I'm going to fire up the car. I'm going to turn the wheel a few times, and we'll get it back up in the air and see if it's rubbing. Feel it a little bit right there. I do not feel anything when I turn it to the right, but when I turn it to the left, when I get to this point right there, I feel a little vibration. But the only way to tell is to get the car back up in the air and see if there's any marks on the bottom of that heat shield. All right, back under the car again. So I don't see any rubbing right now, but I think I am going to pull that heat shield back off again and just see if there's any marks on the paint. It's too much to do on camera, so I am going to take it off, and then we'll check back in and see what it looks like. So it's still rubbing. I'm glad that I put that paint on there. You can see pretty clearly where it is still hitting. So I have a decision to make. So what are my choices? So my choices is to try to modify this heat shield and see if I can get it to stop rubbing, or I run the car without this heat shield. Now, Porsche put this there for a reason, and that's to keep the grease in the U-joint from getting too hot. So I would rather run this, even if I do get a little bit of a vibration, than not run it at all. So I'm going to take my Dremel, try to grind this down. I mean, this is a decent thickness steel, so I do have a little bit of play, I think, even if I do end up burning through. This is the portion that is really close to the arm, so it's not directly under the turbo, so I'm not as worried about it. But like I said, I'd rather have all of the rest of this heat shield there, and if this does open up a hole, then it would just be right underneath that aluminum motor mount arm anyway. So I'm going to get out the Dremel and see how much I can whittle this down. I was able to take at least maybe a millimeter off of the metal. If I turn this here, you should be able to see where I took a little bit of a channel out of the heat shield. Hopefully that is enough to keep that U-joint from rubbing against that. But if not, then hopefully over time it will just wear down to the point where it won't vibrate anymore. But this satisfies me enough to put it back in the car and run it, and now it's time to get it back in the car. All right, I'm gonna try to film me putting this at least back into position. There might be some people that find it difficult to get this heat shield on or off from underneath the car. So I'm gonna do my best to see if I can show you that it is possible to get it in, and there it is. So it is roughly in position. You can see it's just kind of teetering on top now. There's no way I'm going to be able to show getting the bolts in there, but once I do get them in before I screw it in, I'll put it back on video. You should be able to see that Both bolts are in, so the first is right here. You can see the bottom of the bolt sticking through and it goes there. The other one is right above there. So basically what I have to do is take my right hand or one of my hands, and hold the heat shield in place while I screw the bolt in from the top. I know this is a little bit out of focus. There we go. So I basically use one hand to hold this into position and use my other hand here to go up above and hold it and try to screw it in. And then I use my stubby 10mm wrench to get in there and tighten it down. So here we go, one last time. Let's fire it up and see if there's any vibration when I turn the wheel. And there is none. I think that did the trick. I think that did it. That means I was able to keep the heat shield in place to protect that U-joint from the heat from the turbo, and I got rid of the vibration problem. So job done. I don't know if it's a 100% success given that the root cause of the issue is still unknown. However, it does seem to be solved as of now. Just removing a little bit of material from that heat shield seems to prevent the U-joint from scraping against it, and I'm no longer getting a vibration. So if you found this helpful or you enjoyed watching the video, please give me a thumbs up. Please consider sharing with a friend. Maybe they have a vibration with their 944 turbo. The 944 turbos were the only 944s to have that heat shield. So any naturally aspirated 944 does not have that heat shield, would not have this issue. The next video I'm planning is to change the oil on this car. So if you have a 944, you know what a messy process it is. If you've never had a 944 before, I assure you it is one of the messiest oil changes that you can experience. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.